All right, guys, welcome to Onelife Podcast. Today we're going over how to tell if a food's good or bad.
Interesting.
The problem with marketing, it's so confusing. You pick up a food, you think it's good for you, it's fat-free, it's sugar-free, it's this, it's that, and
gluten-free.
Yeah, we're all confused, right? So we're going to kind of go over the right way, or the way that we would do, the way that we would look at a food to find out whether it's good or bad.
Right.
So what's the first thing you go to? What do you look at?
Yeah, they want you to look at the front of the label. Obviously, it's like you said, marketing 101 is the main thing about it. All the free and fat-free and gluten-free, all those keywords that people gravitate towards.
Which they think is good.
Which people are trained for those words pop in their mind. They think it's good, so they go to grab that first. But if you're actually trying to make conscious decisions to eat healthier, you want to turn it right to the back and look at the actual nutrition facts. The label from the back will let you know the actual amount, because a lot of things too, there's so many things that they can actually do regarding marketing and legality. It can say dairy free, for instance, in the front of the label. You turn it around, it can actually still say on the bottom contains milk, contains dairy.
Gotcha.
So
the rules in America are pretty loose, aren't they?
It's wild.
Yeah, I know come from a different country. The stuff that America gets away with is basically illegal in a lot of countries.
Yes, banned, illegal.
Like different substance, different food dyes, type of things they put in their products. You can't get in other countries, but for some reason America's like, good luck.
We'll have to do a different podcast on actual food additives or ingredients that are banned in other countries. That can be talked for like hours, but the food label itself, it's designed to reel you in from the front of the label, where most people don't want to take the time to read the back, because for one, they don't really know what they're looking at. Might be the main thing.
Yeah, exactly.
So a general idea I have my clients and people who ask in general is to just look at the actual facts. Most people who I know, they're starting off in general and they're counting their macros. So I say if you're really, maybe you're following MyFitnessPal, start with that first. We do the one variable at a time. If you're trying to make sure you're eating healthy, because we know, like for instance, condiments. I'm thinking in my mind, when you're going and buying stuff from the shelf, you have your mayonnaise, you have your ketchup, and all those are usually going to have things like soybean oil, omega-6s in other words, which are going to cause inflammation if you have too much in your body. Top of that too, you're going to usually see corn syrup, corn sugar, which is going to spike blood sugar for up to 24 hours, if not longer. So those are things that people watch out for. But back to the macros, before you get that ahead of yourself, I'll have my clients or people ask in general, look at the back and just go off the macros. If you're trying to eat healthy and you're looking at salad dressing or mayonnaise or ketchup, you can see some will be 10 calories for ketchup, some will be 50 calories for ketchup. And if you're doing more servings per day, it can go from 300 calories from ketchup alone. So that's the main thing I look at when it comes to actual, looking at food labels. The front is the marketing part to actually get you to come in and actually get the product itself, but you actually want to look at the back of the label to see what's actually in it, because a lot of things, I wouldn't even say hidden, I would just say it requires you to look at the back and take the time. Most of us don't want to take the time, they want to just grab and go, this looks good, and then later on wonder why they're not losing the weight.
The first thing my go-to is look at the ingredients. The ingredients is always, it's a rule, it's always on the back.
Right.
And then the first ingredient is what's predominantly in the food. Right. And then it kind of filters down from there. So if you pick up a can of tuna and the first ingredient says tuna, you're in a good starting point.
Good start.
And then if it's got just a couple of ingredients, might be tuna and water, and that's all it's in it, you know that's good. Right. But if you look at it and it's got tuna, and it's got water, then it's got salt, then it's got oil, and it's got sugar, you start to realize that even though what it says on the front isn't probably so good on the back. Right. So that's my go-to, and that's something I've learned, and that's something I've stuck with. Does it make it the best way to do it? I'm not sure, but for me, that's what works. Right. Another thing too, if you can't read the ingredients,
yeah, that's always
generally it's not good for you.
That's a good rule of thumb.
Probably I would say it's not good for you, to be honest. A good rule of thumb, yeah. And when I say you can't read the ingredient, means you can't pronounce it. Yeah. You can't get that word out because it's some scientific, chemically structured, not a real food. Yeah. So that's a sign of, look at the ingredients, and if it should be what it says it is. Right. And if it's got a bunch of ingredients, you can't read it, I would recommend not eating it.
That's usually a good general rule of thumb, definitely.
And talk to me on serving sizes. I feel like a lot of people get caught up there. Yeah. Or it's only got 6 grams of sugar per serving. Right. But that's
everything too. That's one big thing too. Condiments, for one, condiments are in general, they're calories. Most things like your mayonnaise and your ketchup and even like your salad dressing, they're calories in general, so they're food. So you're adding that to your food. So that's one thing to keep in mind in general. But like you said, with the serving sizes, a lot of us will just, drizzle on without actually, because
thinking we're using one serving, but we're using 5.
Yeah.
So whatever sugar or fats in that, you got to times it by 5.
Yeah. And the crazy thing about it too is at least this country, they have a leeway they can do. So say like the back of your ranch says 100 calories, it can really be 120, 130 calories. So they don't have to have the
So it's not exactly strict.
Yeah, there's some
just like a rough, really.
And so that's one reason why most people who are really trying to be diligent with the things, you need to weigh things out. That way you can for sure know what you're doing. Because some people eyeball things, this looks like a serving, but if you're really trying to track what you're doing, you need to weigh everything out. And I know that could be a pain in the butt for those who are just starting out. If you're just starting out, I would just say be really, really diligent with everything you're doing, and here's the one thing too, we'll talk about like for me, most people that I see snacking a lot would be like chips. You look at the bag of chips and it says, okay, 130 calories, per 15 chips. And you'll be driving home and you'll be eating some in the car. And then you probably had like 30 or 40 because it's so easy to have chips.
And honestly, who eats 15 chips?
Yeah.
Nobody.
Exactly.
Yeah, most people eat the bag 100% of the time.
So it might help people out. Some things will give you the exacts. Instead of saying, hey, this is 100 grams per serving, I might say this is 20 pieces per serving or 10.
Yeah, which is nice to know, right?
It helps.
Yeah, it definitely helps.
So you can get a Ziploc bag, you can put 10 in there, and you'll probably have like 3 or 4 bags.
or you can control. Then you kind of can control what
at least
what you're having.
Make more of an effort, Definitely.
And another mistake I find that people make is carbohydrates. So something's got 20 grams of carbohydrates. You're like, oh, that's not too bad. But then sugar is a carbohydrate. So if it's got 19 grams of sugar, that's 19 grams out of the 20 grams of carbohydrates are sugar.
That's true.
So that's something else to be aware of. So the first thing, look at the ingredients, make sure it's got what it's supposed to have. Another thing is checking how many servings in that product.
Right.
So it's only got X amount of calories, X amount of sugar. How many servings am I having while I eat?
Correct.
And a bag of chips, like you said, is probably got 10 servings per bag, 15 chips. So if it's got 130 calories times 5 or 10, you're blowing your day out of the water.
Easy as that.
And then being aware of the carbohydrates and the sugar content in the carbohydrates. Right. Talk to me about the fats.
The fats is one thing that a lot of us are really, I wouldn't say getting away from, but a lot of us are really still confused about. We like to look at the sugar as something that we demonize. Even demonize fruit juices and fruits that have sugar because it's still sugar. But to answer your question about the fats, a lot of times when we're considering things on the shelf that we're grabbing that have fats, a lot of the fats aren't actual natural fats. They're genetically modified. So they're chemically induced fats that cause a lot more harm than actual natural sugars would. So a lot of times when we're doing things that have high fats or contain like actual omega-6s, we'll say back again too, when it comes to omega-6s, like people think omega-6, that's a healthy fat, that's your omegas, your omega-3, your omega-6, your omega-9. Your body needs a specific ratio of your omega-3 to omega-9. If your omegas are off in general, most people don't have enough omega-3s. You hear that main omega-3 a lot. You think of fish oil. Okay, I'll do fish oil because I'm lacking omega-3. But your omega-6s, most people usually get so much of because you have it in so much. It's a preservative. It's a genetically modified preservative, omega-3. So omega-6s is going to be usually in everything. In other words, so you usually get more omega-6s than you would omega-3s because it's so heavily abundant in everything. And what I'm getting at is if you have too much omega-6, it's going to increase inflammation. And when you have high inflammation, that's going to block nutrient absorption. It's going to allow your body to not lose weight. It's going to throw off your ability to get proper recovery and proper sleep. And it's like, so how can I offset the omega-6 to omega-3 ratio? You can always lower your omega-6, or you can get more omega-3s as well. So when it comes to the main thing people are hearing about now, maybe on social media or on the news, is cooking oils. And cooking oils usually have a lot of oxidized fats, and they have a high amount of omega-6s. And that's what's going to induce a lot of diseases that are happening now. It's not just the sugar we're worrying about now regarding the corn syrup, corn sugar. Now it's the omega-6s that are actually man-made fats that are causing us to have issues with inflammation and a lot of diseases as well. Okay. So I would be more mindful if we can, like you said, for instance, you're looking at the back of a tuna fish can. If it has some kind of like olive oil or fat in it, that's probably going to be an omega-6. So you want to just look for something with tuna, fish, and water.
Okay.
And that
so
would
avoid
be
the bad oils.
Be mindful of that. Most of us in general, our diet. If you were to get labs done, you're going to have a high amount of omega-6. Maybe not you, because you take care of yourself and be mindful. But the average American, they're going to have a high amount of omega-6s in their diet, because it's in everything. It's in our condiments. It's in our fast food. It's in our food in general. It's a way to preserve our food.
And it's not really talked about either.
And it's very, people hear about cooking oils, but it's very broad. The omega-6s is the main thing, and the omega-3s we want to focus on. So people supplement omega-3s a lot, but the omega-3s that's not going to be in a whole food raw based form isn't going to be as effective as doing it raw. But a lot of us just have an abundance of omega-6s in our bodies that will cause inflammation and hinder nutrient absorption. So if you're wondering why your macros are where you need to be at, you're in a deficit, you're working out, but you're not losing the weight or maybe hitting your goal you want to hit, it could be the omega-6s that are just so high. So be mindful. Look at the back of your labels, and if you can, maybe try and avoid the oils and see how that does for you.
Gotcha. Another thing I want to touch on too, something says fat-free.
Oh boy.
the trick with fat-free is, it may not have fat, but it's got a ton of sugar.
What else?
So the thing is, with a ton of sugar, excess sugar gets converted into fat.
Exactly.
So it may be fat-free at first, but it's so high in sugar, the sugar content in the carbohydrate is so high that when you eat it, it's abundant and it gets converted into body fat. So it may not have fat, but it's making you fat.
Yep. Those keywords in the label, fat-free. Oh.
Yeah, and it's like kind of like Cordell said, is you look at the label, you don't bother doing the research or turning it around. It only takes a minute or so. It's definitely worth doing that. And another thing I would like to touch on is being aware of your calories per day. So you got a general idea how many calories you burn per day.
Right.
I've got a general idea. If you want to lose weight, you need to be eating less calories than what you burn. And you do that on a consistent basis. And that doesn't need to be by thousands. It may only be by 200, 300, 500. So when you're looking at your food, even in a restaurant, and it says X amount of calories, or you got to kind of put two and two together.
Right.
Hey, this Frappuccino has got 800 calories and I'm only supposed to be eating 1,400 calories in a day. Maybe not get it, but maybe get the smaller size, or maybe start to work that in your allowance for the day, your calorie allowance for the day.
Be mindful. Definitely.
Be mindful of what you're consuming. You can't just put your head in the sand and expect results.
Right.
So how, as far as calories, would you if you're just starting, you can just start with calories, right? You don't necessarily have to go into the macros so much.
Yeah, it can be very.
But you can keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah, I'll say you want to make this more not so much of like a chore, because that's when you usually crash and burn or get burnt out. You want to figure out what's going to be the easiest step you can do first.
Just a general idea, right?
A general idea, and if all this is already making you think that it's a lot to think about, we can circle back around to the main base would be just a whole foods diet. If you're doing a whole foods diet, if you're actually going and buying actual fresh fish and chicken and eggs, the macros there are going to be to the T.
Yeah. And
there's not going to be any artificial sweeteners and dyes and none of that going on.
Or your bad oils.
Yeah, and any bad oils as well. So if
then your calories are going to be lower.
Everything's going to be more efficient, and you'll feel it's a lot easier to do it that way. Where if you're buying things on the go, and all your things on the shelf, it's going to be a little harder to track and maybe a little more discouraging if you're not hitting your goal. Your body knows what whole foods are. Your body knows what raw foods are. When you're giving your body chemically induced foods, you might have some kind of, you might slow things down. Most likely, most people come and run into actual, they run into trouble when they have foods that are not whole food based. So if you have things that are going to be high in sugar, here's the thing too that most people forget. Like when you talk about sugar just now, when you're looking at the back of a label and it says 30 grams of sugar, and it's from like a salad dressing, which is somewhere that crazy in sugar. Then you go to actually pick up, some watermelon and it's 30 grams of sugar. There's two different kinds of sugar. The sugar from whole food, from actual watermelon, is not going to affect your body as much as it would from that syrup, from the ketchup or the syrup as well, of course, too. So
because it's natural being the first thing, right?
Natural occurring. Your body knows you're going to have that spike in blood sugar, which is natural and normal, and you're going to back to normalize. Where you have something that's going to be from corn syrup or corn sugar, which would be your syrup or your ketchup, you're going to spike blood sugar, and you're going to probably store all that as well. There's not going to be a benefit from that sugar. So if you can do whole food based food, it's going to be a lot easier for you. You're going to be more accountable. And I would definitely shop around, and even if you're saying, oh, I can't afford organic or I can't afford to eat whole food based, just take your time and see if you can actually do the math between the two. Because a lot of times you can find fresh foods that are just as costly or equal in price as actual stuff on the shelf. It just might mean you go into the store more often, which is not a bad thing.
Yeah. And whole foods meaning basically it's not grown or killed. Right. That's a simple way of putting it.
That's a good way to put it, definitely.
And as I know it's a weird saying, but that's the way I look at it, which is going to be like vegetables, fruit, and meat and eggs. That's kind of all there is to it.
Good amount of variety. Yep.
And if you don't go up every aisle, you're going to avoid, like if you stick to the outside of the supermarket, generally going to avoid the processed stuff.
That's a good way to put it. Yep.
The ingredients that you can't understand, the hidden little marketing things.
Right.
Like you don't get a fresh piece of salmon with fat-free or sugar-free or some type of branding on it, do you?
Right.
It is what it is.
Black and white.
You don't even need to look at the ingredient. It is fish, full stop. You can get in where the fish comes from, but that's a whole different conversation. So just to summarize that, we're talking probably ingredients first, making sure what it is actually in it.
Right.
First ingredient being the priority of what's in that food, and it kind of trickles down from there. Next is being aware, I would say the general calories, wouldn't you?
Yeah, that's the most important. It's going to add up, especially if you're doing condiments. It adds up quick before you realize it.
So the general calories, and then also being aware of the serving size. So it's only got 50 calories, but am I having one serving or am I having 5 servings?
Right.
Being aware of that. And then the last thing I would put it down to is the sugar content inside the carbohydrate.
Right.
Hey, it's only got 21 grams of carbohydrate. A can of Coke, right? It's going to say, what is it? 50, let's go Gatorade, because I know that one on the top of my head. It's only got 52 grams of carbohydrates,
right.
But it's 52 grams of sugar. It hasn't got any sustainable, decent, whole food based carbohydrate in it whatsoever. So it's only got 52 grams, but it's 52 grams of sugar. You might as well get a teaspoon and feed yourself 52 grams of sugar opposed to drinking that.
Corn sugar, yep.
Anything you want to add to that, summarize it off?
No, it's the main thing. People who are looking to get started, just start with one small thing, whether it be looking at the back of the label and actually realizing, because here's a key thing that people can start with thinking is, say you're going to have a meal. Gatorade's healthy because you see it on TV and commercials, and you want to buy it because you finished working out. You have your Gatorade, that's your condiment, that's your drink. Your beverage is your Gatorade, and Gatorade's like 150 calories roughly per serving.
I have no idea, actually.
Yeah, I think it's 120, depending on the size. We'll say 150 calories. That's from corn sugar, which is awesome.
Sounds good for you.
Corn sugar, so you have that. It's a healthy beverage. It has your electrolytes, which is a splash. That's your beverage. You have your salad, which is healthy. You have a chicken salad. And you cover it in your ranch, so you have
your sugar dressing, or
and then you have your, maybe you'll have like a salmon. So when you put all that together and you go to track all your macros, and you wonder why the condiments and the actual beverage itself is the same amount of calories as the food. That should might be scratching your head, So
you think you're making a healthy decision, but you're covering it with something unhealthy, and you're consuming a drink unhealthy with that.
Yeah. So what I'm getting at is, if you actually track your meals, you'll naturally be like, crap, that's a lot of calories that I realized I was getting that was not needed. I could have gone with tea or water instead of that Gatorade. I could have maybe gone with some olive oil and pepper and salt instead of doing the actual ranch, or I could have even just not had the dressing in general. So there's those, we'll say, hidden calories, because we're not being mindful of actually tracking and looking.
Yeah, what's going with the food.
That might be the first step for most of us to do, is just whatever you eat normally, do that meal and then add up what you just ate and look at the back, and you'll be surprised at how much excess you had without realizing that you were doing.
Love that. Have you guys got a different way of doing things? You got something you want to share with us? Leave in the comments below.
Please.
Yeah, but we don't know everything. We love to learn more. Hope you guys got some value, and catch you next time, guys.